coupling, C. In that order. And I'll stop and I'll say which one I'm doing next. So I'm gonna start with Form A. Are you guys ready?
Yep.
Man, I've never had this many cameras on me before. I don't know, dang, you might as well get yours out too. Alright. Every time you do a journal overview, you say what part you're doing a journal overview of. So, front of the truck, passenger side of the engine compartment, driver side engine compartment, front of the trailer, side of the trailer, things like that. Every time after your journal overview, every time you do an individual part, you go back and you have to say crack, damage, release on each individual part. If it's metal, it's crack, damage, release. If it's rubber, no abrasion, bumps, or cuts. And if it's both, say both. The only thing that's going to be only abrasions, bumps, or cuts is going to be your tires. Everything else is either going to be CDL or both. Well, let's get started. So I'm going to do a journal overview of the front of my truck. There's nothing crack, damage, loose. There's no leaks in the truck. All my lights, lenses, and reflectors are not crack, damage, loose. Proper color and clean. If you guys do this, make sure you speak kind of slower and really loud. You gotta speak up when they check it. Alright, so I got my radiator. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking. All my hoses to and from have no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. They are not leaking, and it's filled to the proper operating level. My alternator is not cracked, damaged, or loose. It is belt driven. Belt has no more than 3/4 inches of play. My windshield washer fluid. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking, and it's filled to the proper operating level. You guys catch what I missed?
Yes, general overview.
Yeah. So I've done a little overview of the passenger side of my engine. Nothing's cracked, damaged, or loose. There's no leaking under my truck. None of my hoses and wires have any abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and they're not leaking. So we'll do this for a while and still missing. Alright, so we'll do the general overview, the driver's side of my engine. There's nothing cracked, damaged, loose. All my hoses and wires have no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and they're not leaking. There's nothing leaking under my cab. Alright. My water pump, point right behind that pulley. If you point to here, that's your housing. You'll miss that. They won't count that. Your water pump, point right behind that pulley. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking. And it's belt driven. Belt has no more than 3/4 inches of play. My oil fill cap is not cracked, damaged, or loose. Cap is properly secure, and my oil is filled to the proper operating level. I would check that with my dipstick. I'd check that, I would pull it out, wipe it clean, reinsert it, pull it back out, and make sure it's above the add line. You do have to say how to check oil. So we're going to follow this black hose right here. We're going to follow that back here to my power steering pump and my air compressor. They're back here behind the frame. You can't see them, just kind of point back here. They are not cracked, damaged, or loose. They are not leaking, and they are both gear driven. My frame is not cracked, damaged, or loose. No signs of illegal welds. My steering shaft, it's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not bent. No more than 10 degrees of play. My U-joints are not cracked, damaged, or loose. They're properly greased and no signs of excessive wear. My power steering gearbox, it's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking. All my hoses to and from have no abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and they're not leaking. My power steering reservoir, it's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking, and it's filled to the proper operating level. Upper and lower shock mount and my shock, they are not cracked, damaged, or loose, and my shock is not leaking. My front leaf spring hanger, my rear leaf spring hanger, and my shackle are not cracked, damaged, or loose. All my nuts and bolts are tight. My leaf spring, U-bolts, and bump stop are not cracked, damaged, or loose. Signs of looseness on my U-bolt is shiny metal shavings. My 3-piece steering linkage is not cracked, damaged, loose. It is secured with castle nut and cotter pins, and they are tight. My steering axle and tie rod is not cracked, damaged, loose. It's not bent, and no signs of illegal welds. My brake hose and ABS wire is not cracked, damaged, loose. No abrasions, bumps, or cuts, and it's not leaking. My brake chamber, push rod, and slack adjuster are not cracked, damaged, or loose. My brake chamber is not leaking, and my slack adjuster has no more than 1 inch of play with the brakes released. My brake drum and brake pad are not cracked, damaged, or loose. No illegal welds, no oil or grease. My brake pad has no less than 1/4 inch of pad. My inner and outer rim are not cracked, damaged, or loose. No signs of illegal welds, no oil or grease. My inner and outer sidewall of my tire, no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. It's properly seated to the rim, and it's not leaking. My top of tire have no abrasions, bumps, or cuts. It's not leaking, has no uneven wear. Minimum of 4/32 tread depth. Must be virgin radial, cannot be recaps. Lug nuts are not cracked, damaged, or loose. They're not missing. Signs of looseness be rust streaks, shiny metal, metal shavings. Valve stem is not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking. Has a minimum of 100 psi, and I'll check that with an air gauge. Wheel hub seal. It's not cracked, damaged, or loose. It's not leaking, and it's filled to the proper operating level. Form A.